Hey, I'm Cameron McKenzie. I'm the editor-in-chief over at theserverside.com. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at CameronMCNZ. Right now, I just wanted to talk to you about how to use that remove data column option that you have inside of UiPath. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to load a quick CSV file, remove a data column, write it to an Excel spreadsheet, and I'm going to try and do it all in just about 5 minutes. Now, my last example, I showed you how to go from CSV to Excel. I wanted to add a little bit of a nuance to that and actually remove a column in the process. So that means to demonstrate that, I'm going to create a new project of type process, and I'm going to call it remove column. And as the project is created, the first thing I'm going to do is open that main workflow window, and I want to read in a CVS file. So that means dropping that read CVS on here. Now I've got that under recent. You may have to find that under app integration. So there's read CSV. And when you drop that in, you got to point to a CSV file. Now I don't have one in the root of my project, so I'm going to have to go in and create one. And so there's that project there. That's where the UiPath Studio tool puts all of the data for the project. And I'm going to create in here a brand new file called inputfile.csv. And actually, I'm going to need an Excel file in just a moment too. So I'm going to go in here and create a new Excel file. And it's into the Excel file where I actually want to take all of the process data after the column's been removed. And so I'll call that output file.xlsx. Okay, so I've got my input file and my output file. Now I actually want to do a bit of populating into that input file. That input file, I'm just going to put a bunch of names. These are Toronto talk show personalities, Mike Bullard, Mike Corin, Toronto Mike. You'll notice every talk show host in Toronto is named either John or Mike, so it becomes irrelevant. So I'm going to strip out that first name column and then just write the last names into Excel. That's really kind of the robotics that's happening here in this example. And that's all now in this input file. So I go over here to UiPath, say, what file do I want to read? I'm going to read the input file. It says, where do you want to store it? I want to store it in a local variable. The variable will be named input because it's the input from that input file that I'm storing. It's going to be of type data table. You may have to browse for types. There's system.data.data table right there. That's the one I'm after. And so that's the variable I'm going to hold the input in. And so when it says output to, I just say output to that variable input. And that doesn't quite sound right. It sounds a bit like an Abbott and Costello routine there. But you get the idea. We read the CSV file, and what we read gets stored as a local variable called input. Now, once I've done that, I actually want to remove a column. And so I want to remove that first name column. So that means going into this programming activity and finding the remove data column and dragging that on over here. Now it's going to ask a couple of questions. Nothing's displayed right here, but you see over on the right-hand side, it's going to say what data table? And of course, the variable input is holding the data table input. And it says what column name? And it's the first name that's not relevant to us in the terms of Toronto Talk Radio. So I'm going to pull out the first name. Notice that you can do column or column index as well. So both of those work. But first name seems to work well for me. And you can see that the first name, it's that field right there. And then when I'm done, I just want to write this to an Excel file. So how do you do that? Well, you go into Excel. You can't just say write to Excel files. You actually have to create an object of Excel scope. So I add that on. It's going to say what Excel file do you want to use. Remember, I just created that output file.xlsx in that remove column project. So I'm going to select that one. And it's going to say, what activity do you want to do? And the activity that I want to do is I want to actually just write all of this data. I want to write that range of data. It's really just going to be the last names of these Toronto talk show personalities. And I'll call this talking. And the place where I'm going to start this is E5. And the data table that I'm going to put in is going to be that input data table. Now notice input was the complete file put in originally. So you see input up here. That's read from the CSV, but of course it's been processed. We've removed that one column. That column that we removed is named first name. And then finally what we do is we write all of this to this output file Excel spreadsheet. And the sheet's going to be called talking heads, and the data is going to be start by being put into that cell of E5. Okay, well, I'm going to do a Control S, click Save, does the same thing, and then I'm going to run this. Oh, I get a couple of errors, and the reason I've got the error is because this field actually has to be in quotes, and I always do that. Whenever you have a property, you have to actually put that property in quotations. And so the error that I got was, hey, it doesn't know the variable first name, and of course it doesn't because it's not a variable. It's just a field there. It's just a string. So I now put that in quotes in that remove data column. It's that first name column that I want to remove. Click Save, run this one more time. I get no errors, and if I come in and open up that Excel file, magically I've got all of the different Toronto talking heads here, and none of the first names, all put into a spreadsheet called Talking Heads, and the data starts on column cell E5. And notice that was specified in UiPath, right? Talking Heads was going to be the spreadsheet name, and the data was going to start being appended in there at E5. And so there you go. That's how you use that remove data column. Let me just emphasize, yeah, that column name, you got to put it in quotes. And always forget that. Don't forget it yourself. And that's just how easy it is to do. And there you go. That's everything there is to removing a data column using UiPath. So if you enjoyed that, head over to theserverside.com. I've got lots of articles and tutorials over there. If you're interested in my personal antics, follow me on Twitter at CameronMCNZ. And I'd also say, hey, why don't you subscribe on YouTube?